Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today in our continuing coverage of the remaster changes, we're going to cover the wizard school. In case you haven't heard, the schools of magic, divination, conjuration, necromancy, etc. have all disappeared in the remaster. And because the wizard arcane schools used to be based on those schools of magic, there is now necessity to change how the wizard subclasses work in order to fit with this new change. On the whole, the basic rules of the arcane schools haven't changed very much. You still get a list of curriculum spells from which you can learn one every new spell rank. You still gain extra spell slots of each rank for you to prepare specifically those curriculum spells, and you still get your school focus spells, of which you get your initial one automatically, and an advanced focus spell from a level 8 feat. However, instead of referring to a school of magic for your curriculum spells, there is now a defined list of spells that each wizard school has access to for their extra curriculum spell slots. And in addition, where previously there were 8 wizard schools, one for each school of magic, plus the Universalist wizard, now that number has been reduced to 6, plus the Universalist wizard. So what I'm going to do is, while I will still be looking at both of the focus spells for each wizard school, the spell list I'm just going to give a sort of general vibe check on, since going through each and every spell on each wizard school list would take an extremely long time. So starting first with the School of Ars Grammatica, I must say the curriculum for the school is fairly mediocre. There are a lot of utility spells on the list, which is pretty nice, but remember that you have to prepare one of these spells in each of your spell ranks because of how the curriculum spell slots work, which means that you have to be preparing utility spells which you aren't necessarily going to need throughout the day. Additionally, a decent amount of these spells really want to be cast in your highest level spell slot. Dispel Magic, for example, or Command, which has the incapacitation trait, both want to be cast in your highest level spell slot, which means there is competition for those high level skill slots, and the lower level slots kind of are just left with whatever is left over and don't necessarily get great use. Its initial focus spell is basically Bless, but granting AC instead of bonus attack. You get a small 5-foot emanation. Every round you sustain the spell, that emanation grows and grows. And this is certainly quite a nice spell, especially if you find yourself locked in a lot of close quarter combat. Its advanced focus spell is Rune of Observation, which is basically clairvoyance on a focus spell that also lasts significantly longer. For clairvoyance is usually a 4th level spell that lasts only 10 minutes. Rune of Observation is a 4th level focus spell that lasts a whole hour. And this is quite useful if you find yourself wanting to observe certain locations, but it's not necessarily going to come up all the time. Next we have the School of Battle Magic, whose spell list is full of a lot of very nice damage spells. This is, I would say, quite nice, especially since most PF2 games will have quite a bit of combat. However, it does mean that the lower level slots will kind of fall off as the scaling of damage spells once again really wants you to cast them with your highest level spell slot, meaning that the lower level spells aren't going to be nearly as useful or worth the actions to cast as you get higher and higher in level. Its initial school spell is essentially Force Barrage on a focus point, and for those who don't know, Force Barrage is what Magic Missile got renamed to in the Remaster. And its advanced focus spell lets you absorb acid, cold, electricity, or fire damage as a reaction. Both of these are quite useful combat spells. Having Magic Missile on a focus point means that you can always pick off low health enemies basically whenever you want, And especially as you get to higher levels, energy damage becomes more and more common, and having a way to reduce that incoming damage is quite handy. Next up, we have School of the Boundary, whose curriculum spell list I would say is quite good. There's a mix of pretty solid damage spells alongside good low-level utility, things like Darkness and Phantasmal Minion, that you can use your lower-level school spell slots on without worrying about needing to heighten them as you rise in level. Its initial school spell grants a summoned creature that you control +1 status to all of its checks and DCs for a minute. Now, note that Summon Undead is on the curriculum, meaning that you'll basically always have at least one summon that you can use this on. Summons in PF2, however, aren't really that great, especially as you get into higher levels, and a +1 status bonus, while nice, isn't really going to turn it into a useful combatant. The Advanced Skull spell, however, is quite good, granting a 30-foot emanation which automatically frightens all enemies in the area and forces them to stay at frightened 1 for the duration of the spell. Notably, this doesn't have a save, meaning that so long as the enemies are somewhere nearby you, they are going to be frightened 1, and there isn't a lot that they can do about it. Next up, we have Pacific Wizardry, whose curriculum list is only okay. You have some mediocre damage option and some decent utility, but that isn't really enough to make it an incredible list in my opinion. However, if you can make it to 5th rank and 6th rank spells, the curriculum gives you Wall of Stone, Disintegrate, and Wall of Force, 3 incredibly strong, useful spells that really save the list in my opinion. Its initial focus spell creates a small area of difficult terrain, which in my opinion generally isn't that useful. Yet its advanced focus spell gives you a small amount of temporary HP when you cast a buff spell on an ally. Both of these, in my view, are pretty minor effects, and something of note is that there are actually very few curriculum spells on the list that you want to cast on an ally, meaning that its advanced focus spell doesn't actually synergize with its list very well. Next up, we have the School of Mentalism, whose curriculum gives a lot of really nice spells for an intrigue campaign, but those spells don't really do a whole ton outside of one of those settings. However, it also contains Sure Strike at rank 1, which is what True Strike got renamed to in the Remaster. And Sure Strike is an incredibly valuable spell, allowing you to spend low-level slots in order to make sure your high-level spells actually land. The initial focus spell forces a target to make a will save or be unable to attack you for a round, which is nice, but it does cost an action to set up, which may or may not be worth it depending on the situation. And its advanced focus spell grants you invisibility on a focus point lasting for a minute, or as you scale higher level, 10 minutes, and then finally a full hour of invisibility for a single focus point. Next up, we have the School of Protean Form, whose curriculum I would say is extremely good. There's a lot of solid buff spells in there, which generally don't need to be heightened to maintain their effect, meaning that even as you increase in level, your lower level spell slots will still be quite useful and have relevant impact on your game. The initial focus spell forces a target to make a fortitude save every second, which is an extremely powerful debuff. And the advanced focus spell lets you gain a spell adaptation, such as being faster or gaining dark vision, which, while it won't necessarily be useful all the time, is quite nice to have available for when you need it. And finally, we have School of Unified Magical Theory, which is the universal school that doesn't specialize in a specific type of spell. Because of that, instead of having a curriculum like the other schools do, you instead gain a first level wizard feat and additional uses of drain bonded item per spell rank that you have. Now, this isn't technically a strict upgrade over the other schools, since drain bonded item does require you to cast a spell that you've already cast, meaning that you can, for example, prepare 4 unique spells using your 4 first level spell slots. It has to be 3 unique spells and then your drain bottom item, which copies them again. However, this is still, at least in my opinion, quite a bit better than the other schools, so you have much more freedom in choosing what spells you want to prepare and what you want to use drain bonded item for. The initial school spell is just a basic ranged attack which uses the stats of your weapon, meaning that if you have some fancy magical weapon you are for some reason carrying as a wizard, you can use its effect for your attack. The advanced school spell allows you to temporarily copy another arcane spell that's cast within 30 feet of you and cast it again until the end of your next turn. This one I feel is really restricted. It needs to be within 30 feet. They need to cast an arcane spell, and you need to have your reaction and focus point and a spell slot of the appropriate rank, which you want to spend all to cast that spell again. So that's all for the Wizard School changes in the Remaster. Unlike the Witch, I'm a lot more kind of medium on these changes, whereas the Witch Master I feel was generally across the board an improvement over the old Witch schools. For Wizard, I'm not so sure. The removal of schools of magic from the game has kind of left Paizo in a tough spot with what to do with the Wizard schools, and the curriculum spells are probably the best way to go about it, but it does kind of suck to lose that much flexibility from your wizard school spell slots. But that's all for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope that you will come back next time to see what I have in store next. But most importantly, I hope you have a lovely day.